Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. When energetic gym bunny Zane asked me out after yoga class, I eagerly said yes despite some reservations. His workout session intimidated me as a mere New Year, New Me resolutioner, but his confidence enticed me to shake things up. I expected something active yet casual for a first date: hiking, rock climbing, even dance fitness. But signing me up for a 12-mile muddy obstacle run without asking caught me so off guard when he greeted me this morning. I nervously went along instead of speaking up. We boarded a packed bus to the remote race grounds, turned sprawling dirt chaos, swarming with fitness diehards in tiny shorts. Zane kept detailing the much longer runs he mastered easily while I smiled queasily high on the mandatory bib like a prisoner ID. The opening countdown boom set off a sea of sprinting spandex as music throbbed at deafening levels. My heart raced panic trying to navigate steep, slippery mountains as people shoved past with warrior snarls. Zane was always 20 paces ahead, pausing once to shout I shouldn't hesitate plunging into the mud pits face first for the full rush. I crawled out caked in slimy earth, thoroughly defeated minutes into this version of hell, questioning if Zane cared at all for my comfort and boundaries. But each lap he reappeared to physically haul me onto the next obstacle with bellowing encouragement. The contact gradually shifted too comfortable through the chaos. At a water station, his grimy hand possessively massaged my shoulder, asking how I felt about joining the trail run club he coached. The thought of subjecting myself to more forced endurance misery made me whimper, but his fingers kneading knots in my aching muscles oddly relaxed me after that last agonizing belly crawl. Near hypothermic and quivering by the time we reached the last obstacle, I walked seeing it. A 30-foot warped climbing wall slick with oozing muck. Ripped figures scrabbled up it grinning while others fell back with splats into the foulness. When Zane predictably declared this the peak thrill, I gathered tattered courage to protest despite frozen limbs. But he shushed me, promising to guide my ascent, his tenacity for pushing limits now manic. The hero hype chanting my name for our passing team of struggle bus strangers further muzzled my reluctance. What followed was a hazy trauma of Zane bodily hauling me up the vertical maze inch by inch, indifferent to my screams each time my numb grip slipped. His clenching hands left smears of mud and blood, mine from ragged nails trying to support my weight against a sucking wall. I flinched, feeling his heaving breaths against my mud-streaked neck, whispering we had to make it to share the glory. My vision blurred into a nightmarish limbo until we collapsed atop the summit, his heart thundering against my back as random teammates pounded us happily. I shuddered, feeling Zane press close behind me despite our slick chemical dirt coating and my indistinct weeping. Had anyone else noticed my overwhelmed distress? On the eerie ghost bus back, his brooding gaze fixated on people chatting excited stories of maiming themselves on barbed wire strands or dislocating joints. I sat rigid in agony beside Zane's hulking silhouette as he critiqued every weakness and flaw that slowed our pace, his teeth gleaming hungry in the shadows. Nothing raised alarm from surrounding passengers still withdrawn into their racing highs and music bubbles. My phone had succumbed to mud saturation hours before, or I would have ordered an emergency rideshare from the empty parking lot we were left in. Zane seemed to relish my stranded vulnerability, asking too brightly if I wanted to celebrate finishing with burgers, as he steered us towards his idling jeep caked in trail debris. I shook my head fighting tears, skin crawling beneath drying sweat and dirt now that his domineering hype dispersed into hot and cold blowing from vents as we jostled onto the road. He scolded my immediate lack of appetite after such feat, then chuckled things weren't over yet. We still had to scrub off the glory back at his place. The promise oozed with menace after his indifference to my cries for mercy on that cursed tower with him as smothering guide. I stared rigid out the window, praying for the red glow of taillights or street lamps to appear soon. But Zane's humming along with the radio echoed louder as we delved deeper into unfamiliar darkness. How could anyone exit that hours-long horror believing we had shared an exhilaration warranting these grueling rituals as a couple? I held back hysterics, imagining just how far his zealous fitness fetish might go for motivation. while expecting gratitude for the torment. Survival alarm screamed he had already disregarded, refusing me water when I cramped until I could no longer beg through desperate wheezing. But fight mode rallied my final dregs of strength against shuddering exhaustion. Whatever awaited me at his remote house branded by adventure stickers, I refused to stick around long enough to endure further exposure of my limits meant for conquering. The demons pursuing self-optimization clearly cared little for consent beyond swollen finish lines. When glowing signs mercifully surfaced indicating approaching civilization, I enacted my escape. Lunging to pop the door handle and rolling free took only seconds before I found my shredded legs dashing into forest darkness. Behind me faded the Doppler shouts and swerving gravel of Zane hunting me down. But I ran feral towards the distant dull roar of the highway, his headlights cutting arcs between darkened trunks, always an ominous beat behind my staggering flight until I collapsed safely into blinding headlights a roaring semi. After I vowed to find thrill-seeking partners less consumed with their extreme agenda, and to listen when my body screams, no more, despite the choking peer pressure. Now I know the dangerous thrill is not reaching that celebrated pinnacle by force under someone's selfish guidance. It's escaping the tragic pull towards admiring only those who view your limits as an exciting challenge to defiantly push past, heedless of what gets crushed on their self-righteous climb to peak conquest. Swiping on apps trying to weed out creepers or incompatible zodiac signs has felt pointless lately in the wasteland of one-word conversation starters and blurred gym selfies. But Davison thinks artsy photo reigniting that woo intriguing. Instinct felt promising. We clicked fast bonding over niche podcasts and rescue cats before moving things offline. After days of effortless text banter about everything under the sun, I finally met Davis in person for pizza last night. Just as charming behind the scruff and square glasses, conversation flowed from debate over pineapple topping to which Hogwarts houses we identified with. No awkward gaps the whole night, even after polishing the pie off. I felt a definite spark when Davis walked me in my car, lodged between deja vu familiarity and butterflies, hoping there'd be a goodnight kiss. Sure enough, under the neon pizzeria overhang, we shared a kiss sweeter than the leftover fennel sausage aftertaste. Already looking forward to date number 2, I drove off grinning about finally clicking with someone special. Until I found zero trace of Davis today, despite having just set plans to meet at a coffee shop tomorrow morning. Their dating profile had inexplicably vanished, our previous messages wiped from the app like they'd never existed. The number I had used to chat the last 2 weeks went straight to a disconnected tone. Unease pooled in my gut. I tried not freaking out. Maybe they deleted their profile after our great date, anticipating things getting more serious. But why ghost without explanation? And what about the disconnected number if they had just gotten a new phone or something? I spiraled through rational possibilities before finally digging up Davis' last name for our date convo, recalling what podcast he hosted. I meticulously combed the internet, but no podstation, social media, or professional sites had any mention of such a person existing in my city, or anywhere. Hoping against hope it was just an obscure alias, I even scanned online records for anyone with the initials DI born around the 1990s age they claimed and other personal history tidbits I remembered. Still nothing. Sweaty and shaking, I pulled up screenshots I had sent friends pre-date asking if they saw the same handsome blue-eyed guy or just a blurry overexposed background. Each slowly confirmed an indistinct hazy figure that could have been anyone. But how? The date played over in my mind, now riddled with holes. Bland stock replies to my favorite hometown stories, claiming no social media to share, random gaps between recounting jobs and college. I squeezed my eyes shut, feeling ill as scattered anomalies now screamed orchestration from. Who? Someone had perfectly mirrored my interests, style, and humor to create some phantom dream guy. But why? Just to toy with my very real emotions only to later vanish without bothering to even retain a viable paper trail. The kiss burned ugly in retrospect. Some stranger's lips that knew intimate early details only because they were preying on my trusting openness to connect. I scrubbed at my mouth in the shower until it stung. Of course, none of my frenzied allegations yielded any fruit with fuzzy photographs and redacted contact info. I couldn't even pinpoint when exactly the turning point may have happened towards deceit. Enough tickets canceled that first week from family emergencies or dead phones that meetings were always postponed for hindsight suspicion. Friends attempted calming me down, saying I wasn't alone. Unhealthy dating app obsession is far too common. But yet if Davis turned out to be some bored catfish merely costing on to the next mark, I couldn't rest with the thought they cherry-picked vulnerability from my words to construct such an eerily ideal chemistry. The most sinister part was wondering whether our passion-filled goodbye kiss was just a spontaneous step in whatever twisted game was orchestrated at my expense, or if that equally invested tenderness meant somewhere they actually felt the way I had been so foolish to believe. Of course, asking was impossible with any trace of their existence thoroughly wiped out by design. All I could do was delete and block an app that had fostered a false sense of modern trust, and try warning others that behind charming messages may lurk something hollow and predatory, feigning all the right moves. Something perhaps more complex than bored pranking or scams for gain, but nonetheless unwilling to allow its prey too close once we've already exposed our soft underbellies to its counterfeit affection. Maybe I ignored flags failing to materialize a full human, but the lack of closure or motive still sometimes interrupts everyday moments, fleetingly tricking me into wondering if I imagined the dark reality of deception. If Davis did feel that spark too, depending on wherever they vanished to. And if other shadows are still out there masking themselves in others' longings, slipping deeper into the cracks between how we want to be wanted and what watches silently just out of sight. In hindsight, inviting Jason over after we matched online was my first misstep. What seemed a chill way to test our flirty rapport in person quickly morphed into a whirlwind of lavish weekend trips before I realized we'd barely exchanged basic backstories or life details. Just non-stop starry-eyed adventures fueled by his intoxicating charisma. It struck me as strange when he once showed up on my couch with takeout on a random weeknight I hadn't recalled giving him a key or discussing plans. But gazing into those warm honey eyes tending to my every comment with single-focused devotion as a way of dismissing subtle red flags. Other intrusive anomalies piled up slowly in the disjointed spaces between our next impulsive romantic outing to Prague or Canyon Spa retreat. Odd sessions logged into my email even though my computer slept peacefully on my desk. Custom peppermint soap swapped out in my bathroom drawer during days I knew I hadn't gone shopping. Once, I returned from work to strands of twinkle lights adorning my bedroom that I texted Jason gushing about later, allowing him the perfect opening to surprise me with them on a whim. Just thoughtful gestures swathed in tempting mystery, no matter that I hadn't recalled even telling him my favorite hydrating serum scented like creamy gardenias before finding it tucked in my duffel upon returning from a resort visit. In the first wary moments questioning roots of this oddly seamless synchronicity in my intimate habits and spaces, the unease was quickly washed over by another incoming tide of Jason's magical charm offensive. Hadn't I just been musing out wanting to stargaze on a clear night this week before he spontaneously appeared inviting me to do just that? What fortune to have someone so wonderfully in tune to my essence. Until the sight of champagne flutes filled with golden mimosas and blood orange slices awaiting me on my kitchen counter early one dawn registered the tampered apartment as foreign crime scene instead of hassle-free romance. No missed contacts on my drained phone from a getaway mountain cabin void of all signals corresponded to Jason's mentioned mud-canceled client meeting the previous afternoon. I saw with chilling clarity how every orchestrated opportunity for whimsical distraction had provided accessed cover for him to invade my private spaces, all while meticulously grooming me to surrender my last palms out psychological barriers out of profound gratitude for this magical perfect match. My skin prickled realizing he had effortlessly absorbed the details about my favorite breakfast splurges and the layout of my kitchen simply by letting himself inside to explore and ingest facets of my identity without permission. It suddenly dawned on me that the solitude of the remote cabin also meant days of privacy violation flooding my unsupervised spaces left wide open. How long had Jason been scripting this elaborate illusion of fate and intimate connection by mining my computer search history or journals entries or text chains with friends when I wasn't home to consent? I flashed back to coming home finding new coordinated accent pillows I had swooned praise over to him later. At the time, I gleefully allowed the expanded fantasy of enlightened partnership consoling innermost emotional spaces. Now I detected the hoax, allowing him the ultimate access to trespass unseen, absorbing more ammunition for later deception as his hollow theatrical refrain. My stomach turned, realizing just how systematically Jason had utilized my absence to calm through every aspect of my existence, violating my trust as he expertly anticipated private thoughts to feed back to me later, wrapped in practiced sweet attentiveness, all while meticulously grooming me to surrender my last psychological barriers out of profound gratitude for this magical perfect match. I shuddered, seeing how stealthily he had populated my private world with thoughts, items, gestures he first stole away himself behind an intricate pretense of mutually built intimacy and caretaking, when in reality he was simply grooming a hostage through manipulation under the guise of fate's blessing. Every violating infiltration was laid bare once surveillance footage ultimately betrayed the unthinkable betrayal barely hidden beneath devoted reverence. The recordings exposed how Jason ensured ways to copy my keys and routines, comb through communications, plant emotionally charged mementos, inhale my scent off stolen linens, shadow my words echoed from his cunning alter self, always erasing traces with violent sonatas swelling as entrance music to the nightmare ballad of watching this stranger wearing love's beguiling mask keep returning, wearing down my boundaries through manipulative illusion. In the end, his scripted devotion was built by theft, of passwords, of privacy, of consent through lies about access and intimacy. Yet even understanding the pathological psychology behind headline horrors doesn't penetrate the bone-deep violation of being watched, spied on, cataloged, preyed upon by hands that once tenderly cradled your face as adoring eyes assured, "You're so seen by me, my kindred spirit." The police corroborated every exploit to ensure he can't lurk in the wings, plotting encore access now that the locked doors and drawn blinds have slammed shut. But footage still reveals his shadow passing my window some nights when my mind tricks me, hearing his pet name whispering through the air vent, asking if I ate the way he still craves us. And the panic response remains hair trigger coded to any faintest hint of his once favorite cologne trailing in the darkened hallway where he once stood watching me sleep. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.